All right, thank you, Wendy. Um, what questions would you, or what things would you like me to cover as we go the um, through the 12 driving forces? Are there specific things that you would like to know? Please put them on the chat, and then Wendy will let me know as we proceed. A little bit of history: the way that the 12 driving forces came about. Um, a f- about 5 years ago at the annual conference, Bill Bonstetter asked the question about what it would be like to work in a job that was completely different than what you wanted. What would that to feel like to have to spend 8 hours a day in a job that provided you no incentives, no rewards, nothing that you really enjoyed in the work. So TTI started doing, so the research department started doing some research, and they went back to about 25 years worth of data in their data bank and start analyzing that, and got some insights as a result of doing that data. The other thing is that TTI's research department does is they do brain research. So they were able to take the motivators or the values and test how people reacted, their brain would react to what was exactly like the values or the motivators, and what was the complete opposite. And what that data revealed, and what the neurological research revealed, was in many instances avoidance is a stronger motivator than than acceptance. So the other part of this was the struggle with the way that people tend to interpret the graphs, the vertical graphs, where high is good and low is bad. And so they were trying to work around that also. And that's when, based on that research and seeing what the differences are, led them to the continuum. And so the continuum for the motivators or the values was launched about 2 years ago, and the behaviors or the disc is also being done. There's been some prototypes out on that. They're running about a month behind, but we'll also see a disc put on a continuum in the near future. So if you think about where all this originated, think about your own values for a minute, and think about how it would have what it would be like to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, in something that's completely opposite of what you value. For example, if you're a high utilitarian or a high economic, how it would be doing in an environment where everything was giveaway. If you're motivated by helping other people and contributing to society, what if you were in a job that everything is rewarded based on your return on investment and how much you produce and how quickly you do things? So just think about the aesthetic, the economic, the altruistic, the regulatory, the theoretical, whichever are your two highs, and the complete opposite of that. My oldest granddaughter is 100 theoretical, and the way her mother would punish her when she was bad, instead of sending her to her room, she would take all her books away. And then another member of the family is a high social or a high aesthetic, and he gives away things and helps other people to his own detriment. Uh, what's important to him is not money, or just as long as he can get enough on the plate to get by, he's happy. Otherwise, he's out doing everything, cleaning up the streams in San Jose, or helping the homeless, or working at uh, an acute care facility. So this particular slide that Wendy has put up shows the six categories on the left, and then um, the 12 categories on the right, and then how Intermetrics, Spanger, and TTI are different but are the same. Really, the only difference is, as you look across that table, is the choice of words. Spanger's work was done in 1928, his original work, and that's the work that both Intermetrics and TTI's motivators, or driving forces, or values are based on. And some words have been retained by both of our companies, and some words have been changed. And one of the reasons for changing words is that as time changes, words mean slightly different things, or have slightly different connotations to people. And one important one is the second one from the bottom, where Spanger in 1926, religious was a good word. However, over the years, both Intermetrics and TTI have discovered that the characteristics of a high individualistic also are found in people that have a defined system for living and do things in a routine, predictable, recurring way. They follow rules and process and order, be that religious, or be that other things that can determine their lives. For example, a judge, a Supreme Court judge, is following very stringent rules, but not necessarily is following a religious discipline. Oh, okay, and the next one.
Hey, what's up,
Then takes these.
How was the weekend?
Then takes these and converts them into the 12 driving forces. So starting off the theoretical, and the definition of that is the passion for the discovery, discover, systematic, and analyze the search for knowledge. So truth and knowledge. And in the 12 driving forces, the definition that's shown there is the definition that's shown there is knowledge, and instinctive is, on the one hand, it's using past experiences, intuition, seeking specific knowledge only when necessary. And that's also typically a characteristic of the high utilitarian. And then the intellectual has the desire to discover truth and knowledge, to learn all he or she can about everything. The utilitarian is wanting a return on investment involving time, money, or resources. And there, the header on the report or on the graph is utility. Selfless, completing tasks with little expectation for personal return. In other words, giving to others. Resourceful, wants practical results, minimizing both effort and maximizing efficiency, a return on their investment in terms of time, talent, energy, and resources. Then the aesthetic is the desire for form and harmony, and often you find in the aesthetic would be the people that are into sustainability and conservation. Also with the aesthetic is the self-actualization, uh, becoming more and better, becoming at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Though the term that's used in the page in the report is surroundings. The objective is functionality, um, and objectivity and practicality to a certain extent. And then the 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 right hand side of the continuum is the experience, enjoying the experience, subject open to subjective views, and also they want to balance and harmony in their surroundings. The social or the is a passion to invest a person's time, energy, resources into helping others achieve their potential. And there, the term is others, the guiding term, and intentional is assisting others for a specific purpose, not just for the sake of being helpful or supportive. In other words, helping people when uh, the people are willing to work as hard as they are. Kind of the Doug Brown way of coaching and providing processes. And he assists, the altruistic will assist others for the satisfaction of being helpful and supportive, wanting to give to others for no no need for return on investment, no need for anything for self other than helping others. So often found in social workers, obviously. Individualistic um, is uh, is the passion to use position uh, to affect and influence others, and also to have control of our own destiny and um, our own lives. Basically, the definition of political, that has the term for that is power, and the on the low side of the continuum is being supportive in a role with contributing with little need for any personal recognition. And on the higher end, the right of the continuum, it's need for status, recognition, and control over personal freedom, and many times control over others. Frequently, when we're working with CEOs and leaders of organizations, we often find that uh, many of those folks, not all, but many of them are commanding. They're wanting to guide, direct, and control something, control whatever the organization is committed to do, such as something like the Salvation Army, or something like a judge or a police officer, often commanding, and as I mentioned, CEOs and other leaders. Then traditional is looking for the ideal and achieving a system for living. And this can be religious or uh, uh, and its terminology is methodologies under the 12 driving forces, and the two sides of the continuum are receptive, looking for new ideas, new methods, and opportunities that fall outside of a defined system. And then structured are people that want very traditional approaches, proven methods, and defined systems for being. In a client, in one of the clients that I'm working with, um, I find that all the accounting people are highly structured. They want to do exactly the same things the same way, all the way, following proven processes, procedures, and methodologies. All right. Any questions here, Wendy? that you see?
Unfortunately, I can't see my chat box with the screen share on.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll keep going. The next graph is the driving forces graph itself. And there you'll see knowledge, utility, surroundings, others, power, methodologies that we just talked about. The left and the right descriptors, instinctive versus intellectual. And the way you read this is the number to the bar that is to the um, extreme left or to the extreme right, one way or the other, is strong. 50 or the zero right in the middle is neutral, and the red circles that you see with a number in is the actual score, how they scored on the assessment. So on the intellectual with the high, the score was 64 from the choices, and on the instinctive it was 29. And then the little uh, numbers that you see in the small circle is whether that is their first or their second or their third or their fourth or their fifth. And in this case, intellectual is 1 and the instinctive is 11. And then the little tiny letters that you see at the top of the red circles is I stands for uh, in that it's a secondary driving force, that P is primary, or excuse me, I is indifferent. I is indifferent. P is primary, and S is situational. So in each set, as there was, or as there is in the intermetrics version of this, the first two motivators are your primary motivators, or the first drivers of your behaviors. The second, or the third and the fourth are situational drivers or motivators of behavior. And in this case, it's the first four, the top four, the highest ranking four are the um, are the primary motivators of behaviors, and the bottom four are the ones that are indifferent to us. And obviously, the middle four are those that are situational, depending on what's happening, what's going on around us. The next one. This is helpful to a lot of people. This is one of the two wheels that are in the report, and it's the one that I tend to use the most because it helps to put words behind where the person falls on the graph. So we can see this particular Maria, her primary driving force is intellectual, and you can see how that's scored, and the three words that help give understanding to what that driving force is covering, what the motivator is and motivation is in that driving force. The other helpful thing with the particular wheel is to look at the driving force directly across from it, and that is the one where tend where a person will be indifferent. They won't be inspired or motivated. In fact, they might be turned off. And also helpful to point out is that in the case of someone like Maria, who is intellectual, she might have problems working with somebody that's instinctive, or she might have problems working with somebody who is interested in form and harm and beauty and everybody singing kumbaya when she's highly objective. All right, and going on to the next. So this is a report or a page out of the report that does both the motivators and the behaviors. Another very helpful page in helping people understand themselves and helping managers understand their people. And what I often do when I debrief people in this, I have them read down this list, and there's about 12 bullet points on this. I ask them to select the 4 or 5 that are most important to them and put an M behind that, and then select the 4 or 5 that are at least important to them, put an L behind that, and then have them rank uh, the top 4 or 5, 1 through 5, and the bottom 12 or so points, 12 down to 8, and then talk to them about if it's a person's manager or employee, talk to them about how not meeting that will affect that person, and to what extent that person on his or her job is compatible, or does the job get in their way and conflict with the job. Very insightful. Okay. Then the driving force wheel. This is a client, and this is the top 5 people in the organization. The NO is the in commanding. The NO in commanding is the CEO. The JH over in objective is the president. And the AP, I'm reading on the outer ring now, because the outer ring is the number 1 driver. The AP is a director of or vice president of business development. Interesting that AP Adrian has a PhD and can never get enough information about the products or the services or the clients that we're working with in this company. Then also, before we go to the next one, think about Nate, the commanding, the CEO, and he's a very high utilitarian. And think about how that plays out, how that commanding motivator plays out with the behavior that is we'll see on the next chart. You go to the next one, Wendy. So there we have a commanding motivator with a conductor. And then you see the sales guy that I talked about, Adrian, he's the persuader. And the way he persuades people is not with charisma, it's with facts and logic and data. And then JH is the president of the company, and he's objective, and he uses a lot of words and a lot of conversations to persuade people. So just blending a little bit of behavior in with this, so you can get a sense for a real life situation. Then on to the next one. Okay, here is the place you can go to get a lot of information about the 12 driving forces, much more than than I provided here today in this overview, go to my.ttisi.com, go into your account, put in the search box 12 Driving Forces ebook, and then that'll take you to 12 Driver Forces downloadable resource, and then click on reference manual, and I don't know, 20 or 30 pages will come out, and it's very helpful information in understanding the 12 driving forces. And then that's the prepared part of today.
So Bob Stinson had a question. He said, one of the values in the intermetric system was economic. How do we measure that in the TTI motivators?
Okay, economic is utilitarian in TTI, and it is selfless or resourceful. So a high utilitarian would be resourceful. A lower utilitarian would be completely the opposite.
Good. And then Doug Brown says, George, conflicts, purely work conflicts in terms of most important? You may need to clarify.
Yes, but of that list of 12 or so bullet points, Doug, some are more important to a person than others. And it's wanting to get out the 4 or 5 that are most important to a person. So that's, as I've debriefed, that's why I do that way, finding the ones that are the most crucial and meaningful to that person.
Okay. So it's without context. In other words, it's not a work context or it's a personal context. It's just a life context. Thank you. That's what I wanted clarification on.
Actually, 99.9% of what I do is in work context. So that's, as we work through the report, we're always reflecting back to the job. So it's very rare that I get into the whole life.
That's what caused the question, because you started to talk about work, and then when you started to talk about most important, you were no longer talking about work. That's why I wanted to get it clarified. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
George, Peter LaChance has a question. The company that you've been using, it seems very fortunate to have such behavioral diversity in its leadership team. How has that helped them, and how has it been difficult at times?
It's helped them because they are able to get the right people in the right spot. If I put the rest of the organization up there, you would see the customer service people all fall on the left-hand side of the wheel, are all supporters, and the salespeople tend to be on the right-hand side. They're either hard drivers or very persuasive type people. This particular client understands this. And when we recruit, we're recruiting specifically for those particular characteristics, i.e. for customer service, we're looking for supporter types, and we're doing a job benchmark, and we're measuring people against the characteristics that we find in the disc and in the values, and also in the Hartman, and then of course we're also measuring the soft skills. Oh, there is inherent conflict, and fortunately the leadership understands that conflict. Whereas the supporting people, the people in finance, tend to be too slow for the people that are on the right hand side. The CEO wants everything day before yesterday. And so people that are just delivered this afternoon are always late. And so again, with that knowledge, it has brought about some degree of understanding and empathy for the other person. That answer,
It's a
Peter?
beautiful thing, George. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, that was beautiful, and that's great work you're doing. Thanks.
thanks. Other questions?
George, I have one. With the disc and driving forces, are you now using that as a much stronger criteria than what we would normally talk about the attributes in terms of predictors of success on a job, or are you still using all three kind of in equal weight?
The
I'm sorry, my mic was down. Did you
yeah,
catch that
I
question?
heard you, and I was going to show this and decided not to. It would take us too far off, but I put together a matrix for clients at that when they're in the selection process that compares the characteristics. And the way that we've been guided in the selection project process is 33% of the process is you use the background of the person, their knowledge, their skills, their experience, their education, and then their current or primary job. 33% of it is the interview process, and the remaining 33% of the selection process is based on the assessments. And so the way I set up the assessment is I have the top 4 driving forces at the top of the chart, and use reds, greens, blues, and yellows to signify how close the person comes to the actual benchmark. And putting the driving forces or the motivators at the top of the chart, the thinking there is that if a person is motivated to do the job, the person get the will get the knowledge and the skills and the competencies to effectively do the job. If the person is not motivated to do that job, if the person's indifferent to that job, uh, he's not going to do very much more than show up. And so then after the top 4 driving forces, in some situations, I put the bottom 4 to saying this is what the person does not want compared to what the job does not want. Then go into the behaviors, what behaviors the job is looking for, and then go into the Hartman, the
AI.
yeah, yeah, and the six dimensions, what the job wants in those 6 dimensions, and what the person actually has in those 6 dimensions. In the case of an executive position, I then go back and go through the attribute index, and we benchmark what attributes are most important to that job, the 7 attributes that are most important to that job, and then how the person measures or compares to those attributes. And then the next thing that I do is the competencies. And what are the 5 to 7 competencies that are most important to this job? And then if you think back 50 years ago to the Peter principle, effectively what we're looking for, a person can be skilled in doing the job, but yet his attribute index is low in that particular job, or he has a relatively lower score. He can do it, but what happens when the pressure comes on? What happens when the workload gets too great? So then it gets to be comparing the Volkswagen and the Ferrari going down the highway 80 miles an hour. Who's working the hardest and who's going to fall behind when they come to a hill and have to go up over the hill? And then there's some other things. I also have a 360 done. Uh, with prior employers and do a background check. So, and then on a separate page are all the hard skills, all the the things that would fall under experience, skills, knowledge, background, and again measured in reds, blues, and greens and numeric values. But the reds, blues, and greens are just mainly to be it so they can understand it at a glance.
Thanks. Do you have a shareable visual for what you just described?
Yes, I do. I can't put it up because I don't know how to do this. I'll send it to you, Doug, and I'll send it to Wendy for everybody else who I don't have email.
I was gonna say, if you just send it to me, I can post it to the affiliate website if that works for you.
Okay, all right, I will do that. That works.
Because sometimes, even with all the unimetric stuff, to be honest with you, sometimes I don't see that much of a distinction in some of the 82 attributes. Particularly when on the reports, when I see that they score identically, to me it's always a bit of a crapshoot when you start to say, well, what are those characteristics that you're really associating with that job?
Yes, and that's what led to the competencies, developing the competency model, is that an analogy that I use is that if you look at a guy that's 7'2" tall, slim, trim, has all the attributes of a basketball player, but has never picked up a basketball in his life, is he really going to be competent as a basketball player? He hasn't neither the knowledge or the skills, and that's the piece that that the competencies bring to it, and that you'll be hearing a lot from TTI about the different assessments as when they start this training. That's found in the trimetric HD, which stands for Hartman and DNA, which is the attribute index, and then the competencies.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, anybody? Well, thank you, and hopefully that will be a good background for the additional training experience that you'll get from TTI. We have several people on this call that are more knowledgeable in all this than I am, like Ryan Schultz and Rick Coaster and others, and I'm sure that we're if you have questions, Wendy can direct you to somebody that can answer that.
Any final questions?
Thank you.
All right, then enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and thank you, George.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
George.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Take care. Thank
Thank
you.
you.